It is 6:01 on November 20th, and I will call the meeting of the Community Development Committee to order. And we'll note the presence of myself, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Mayhew, Councilmember Christensen. We also have in attendance Council members Washington and Benson. We have City Administrator Chambliss, and we have Community Development Director Arteche.
Just a quick clarification. We have Councilmember Watton.
What did I say?
Washington.
Watton, not Washington. Thank you. And that takes us to the agenda approval. I do see that we added in Councilmember Mayhew's request for the EDC liaison report. Were there any other adjustments you guys wanted to make to that?
To the agenda now.
Okay. Then our next item is for public comment. I do not see any members of the public here in the chambers. I do see that's Commissioner Harrison, correct?
Yeah, she's here for the EDC.
Okay. Excellent. Then if there are no public comments, then we will move on to the next thing, which is the minutes. And I didn't have anything to change with regard to the minutes. Did you folks have any amendments you want to make? Councilmember Christensen, yes.
So just for the notes under the Snoqualmie Valley Affordable Housing Task Force, I wasn't sure if the blurb that was under there was drafted in a way that was I guess there were a few tweaks that I thought we might want to consider. And could you pull it up if you don't mind?
You put it on screen.
Oh, do you want me to share screen?
The minutes? Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah, number 3.
Yeah. So for that one, let me go ahead and grab it so that it's bigger. So it said that it was a timeline for an RFP or RFQ, including action items, was also created. I just wanted to make sure that we were being careful with the verbiage because I didn't think that we had developed a timeline for the RFP or RFQ here. And I wanted to make sure that we were just clear in our language that so that if somebody's going through and reading the minutes that they don't think that necessarily that's something that we did as this group. So I thought that maybe it would be more appropriate to revise it. So there's a little bit more clarity.
Perhaps discussed instead of created.
I think discussed would be helpful. Another thing I thought we might want to add is in the sentence prior, it says the Snoqualmie Valley Affordable Housing Task Force met and shared objectives and created a menu of strategies of ways to create affordable housing. And then I thought we might want to also add in for consideration by CD and City Council as well. So just tightening up that language a little bit. And then to say maybe discussion ensued about options to encourage the creation of affordable housing, including the potential allocation of city funds housing projects. Just so that people don't think that we've taken additional steps before including the rest of council, and just so that we're very clear on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Council. Director Arteche, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also recall that we could add, since we're in a moment of perhaps revising it, that the task force was going to go out and solicit some level of interest, to make sure that we had a bountiful group that would be replying back to an RFP, RFQ. I mean, that effort's pretty extraordinary. So we would do it only when we knew we could get a response.
I think that sounds right.
Thank you. I don't have any further comments on the minutes.
Okay, since you changed a couple of things, do you mind just reading back? It looks like a red line there. What you were suggesting that it should read as?
Oh, yeah. So my own notes, and this was just marked up, and you can take it or leave it. So the Snoqualmie Valley Affordable Housing Task Force met and shared objectives and created and this is a quote, menu of strategies, end quote, of ways to create affordable housing for consideration by the CD committee and city council. The Snoqualmie Valley Affordable Housing Task Force created a timeline for an RFP, RFQ, including action items. And then I just had a note saying that that should be specific. And then discussion ensued about options to encourage the creation of affordable housing, including the potential allocation of city funds to housing projects. Strike through asking for proposals. So allocation of city funds to housing projects. And whether the city is willing to offer, or what the city is willing to offer to attract developers and consider flexibility in zoning height. And then the rest is just as is.
Okay. Any other additions or suggestions to the minutes? Okay, then let's go ahead and adopt the minutes with those adjustments. Okay, the next thing is agenda bills, and the first thing is the annual floodplain management and repetitive loss plan. And who's going to introduce this one for us?
I can go up
Go
to the
ahead.
podium. Let me just share my screen.
Who's having Andy?
Yeah, do we have mic support?
No.
I don't think it's on.
There are problems with the podium microphone last week, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I got. Good evening, Emily Arteche, Community Development Director,
that works.
council members. So yeah, you may recall that this was an agenda bill last year, and it is the same agenda bill. We've updated it. It's just important for us. We have an obligation to share the fact that we accomplished again another certification. Just scrolling down, the most important thing is to know that we submitted successfully our progress report and recertification documents on November 8th of this year. It is a big effort for our staff to do this. We have also a repetitive loss analysis that's going on that will be completing by the end of the year. One thing that you'll see coming up next year is you'll see this agenda bill coming back again with an attachment as we get to the point where we're going to need the council to consider a resolution for the repetitive loss. All of this work that we do is so important. They are steps that we're taking forward to ultimately achieve a lower class rating, going from a class 5 to a class 4. And so the repetitive loss is part of that. This progress report is part of it, and additional steps that we'll take next year, including some revisions to the flood improvement permit in the municipal code. So those changes need to be reflected from recent legislative changes at FEMA. And again, we'll be leading ourselves to a successful path forward to a new classification. So that's all I'm going to say about this. Happy to answer any questions if you have.
Question? Yeah, Councilmember Mayhew.
Well, just quick comment that, this is for us on the council, for those that are watching, for us on the council, this is kind of a routine thing where we spend a lot of time on this, but don't let our reaction that this is routine mislead you. We think this is terribly important. We understand the significant impact this has on insurance rates for particularly those in, on the valley floor here in Meadowbrook area, Old Snoqualmie, and that's why so much effort is put in by the staff and attention by the council. So we find it terribly important and really pleased with the progress we're making towards improving that category. So great work, keep it up, and yes, we're with you. And so the lack of questions are not because we're not with you.
Appreciate you speaking for me.
Well, now that you're in a role, can I add a little bit more?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So if you look at your packet material, you'll see that there's a nice glossy flyer in there that was sent out to everyone within our floodplain. And there's also an updated exciting letter that we wrote. So the letter was much improved last year from years past, but this year we even added a Survey Monkey. So if you have people that you know that live in the floodplain, that Survey Monkey is still open. We get points for that. We get credit for that. It's extra engagement, without having, to be so labor intensive. So please spread the word.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Mayhew.
Yeah, if that's the case, then if anything could be done with the city's communication department to push that very message out, I think, whether it's our social media feeds, whether it's a press release, whether it's the, I know the monthly utility billing gets pretty full of things we're trying to communicate, but anything we can do to push that, if that's going to help folks, help us get better rating, better insurance rates for our folks, then we should really push that out.
Will do.
Yeah, Councilmember Christensen.
I was just gonna say, I was also particularly impressed that it looks like we were awarded, based on the table in here, a very significant grant with the flood control district to continue
Yes, we
purchasing
we
properties.
recently completed a new interlocal agreement with the flood control district for several $1 million. So that
6 million.
yeah. So that was a much big increase from the years past. And so thanks to Mayor Ross, she really worked hard to help achieve that number, and we provided her all the information she needed to make it happen. So
Yeah, that's a huge amount. Great work.
Yes.
Mike.
City Administrator. Man, I am struggling with the title. City Administrator Chambliss. Thank you.
Director Arteche is being very modest. It was a tag team between Director Arteche and the mayor, and they both did a tremendous amount of work for that grant.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I always have to, with my due diligence, ask the silly questions. Sometimes I do this in Parks and Public Works as well, when maybe they have to fix a pipe or something, and I just ask, okay, for the sake of argument, if we didn't do this, what happens? And they'll say, well, then the water flows the wrong direction, or we'll be in violation of some state law or something like that. So just to be clear, if for sake of argument, the council didn't approve this, then what would happen?
So no approvals needed. We just need to know, we need as staff to know that we told you. That's all we need to do. We need to make sure that our council members have been informed.
Is that the resolution that you're going to be bringing, or?
Yeah, the resolution is slightly different as we embark on a 5-year annual audit.
Okay,
So it'll be a little bit different. This is just to keep the information flowing. We've got a pattern now. It'll work. We can bring it back next year. We can add on to this. We can do a lot of things with this agenda bill, but for now, it's just an information to you. We're telling you that we did it. We accomplished it on November 8th, and we did it to the full extent required.
excellent. All right, and then the resolution, something else is coming.
Something else, I
Okay,
mentioned
excellent.
it as just a little sneak peek for next
All right.
year.
Well, then thank you very much for the update.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, then that takes us to the next item, which is the land use recommendations. And I believe that one we thought we were getting pretty close on, but I believe that's the one that Councilmember Christensen had some questions, and then staff went back and responded to them. So I wanted to bring it back to us one more time, in part so the Councilmember Christensen, you could respond to their comments, as well as if there are any comments from Councilmember Mayhew, because I think, if memory serves, the Councilmember Mayhew missed that one meeting when we talked about this a while back. Okay. So thoughts on the land use element?
Well, I can address
Councilmember Christensen.
thank you. I can address the questions that I raised previously. I appreciated getting a detailed response. My concerns had been for the basically rules and the considerations that have been placed before, since they were being taken out. I just wanted to make sure that those issues were addressed elsewhere. My concerns have been resolved in connection with the items on the spreadsheet. So thank you.
Okay, great. And then Councilmember Mayhew, do you have anything to add about land use?
I don't have anything to add. I just want to make this comment, and I know that staff and this committee and the whole council takes this really seriously, but I just want to make this look, getting the comprehensive plan updated well is very important. This is very serious stuff, and it's just so critical. Even more critical than that, and this is the point I want to make, is what we then do subsequently. One of the things that often disappoints me as we have council debates over the years on whatever matters coming in front of us is how infrequently it seems to me that we refer back to our comprehensive plan. And so doing all this work and then sort of leaving it on a shelf doesn't let us get the full value of it. So I would just, leave off with that comment is, I think the challenge to us now is, as we adopt this revised comprehensive plan, let's try to make it, use it to guide what we do going forward as much as we can. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, I do remember that on the planning commission when I was there and we did a quote unquote downtown relook, there were some elements that that Jason brought us back to, and we actually codified a few things that were in the comprehensive plan through that process. So perhaps we can continue that sort of thing, continue referencing it as appropriate. Director Arteche.
Yeah, I did want to, since we're on land use, I did want to bring back to your attention that in your packet material that staff has been doing a tremendous job at seeking early and often comments, not just from our citizens. And we did have a very successful public open house this past month. It was well attended, numerous comments that came back, and just a much appreciated event. But we also do that for our neighboring governing agencies like PSRC and Commerce. And the goal is to get that certification from them. We want them to agree that we did our job and we did it according to the law. And they did come back with a couple comments that it would be appropriate for you to take a look at. There are two slight modifications to two of the draft policies, and it would be appropriate for you to take a look at them and decide if those could be those two policies could be amended to read as the suggested language in your packet.
Any other thoughts on land use? No. Okay. So then for the next step, did we want to forward this to council for some other discussion, or do you want to just wait until we bring the whole package to council next year?
So it would not be appropriate to take the whole package to council next year. It would be most appropriate to take each one as we get them done to the council to share with them the work that has been done, including the work that you're doing, and allow them the chance to ask questions, absorb the information, and basically give the staff and the citizens a head nod. Yeah, we're on the right track, and this is going to be, the draft that we'll put forward. We will come together as an entire document, later next year. But we want your feedback now. We want your head nod now. We want to put this and assemble it together so you see it coming together and you're not getting inundated with something that's massive. And I would kind of take you back to this time last year when you had the mill site. And if you recall how arduous that process was, with multiple extra council meetings each week, several hours long each week. It could be like that, or it could be different.
And hopefully if we get the work done now, then we can.
Yeah, we need to absorb it. And you're a very important group to help introduce this to the full council. So what you see and what you've observed and what you're going to recommend to the rest of council is very important. And I would like to be able to recommend a land use element with those two policies amended if the committee agrees to that.
Councilor Mayhew.
So that 100% love that. That sounds great. By the way, I also love on the repetitive loss, that dialogue back and forth with the council, so that by the time something actually comes for them to act on, it's just routine, like wonderful. That's how this should work. So that's fantastic. With regard to bringing this forward, I think the council's plate is completely full between now, where we have, I think, 2 more scheduled council meetings between now and year end. I think once we get past year and, we've got to get past mid-biennial budget review, we've got some big things happening, but maybe bring this forward starting in January, might be a real great time to fit that in.
Okay, then, without objection, we'll forward this to council.
When?
When there's time. When there's time, I'll leave that up to FNA to decide. Yes.
Just point of clarification. Are we able to move this forward to council when there's time, perhaps in January, with the 2 updated policies that
Yeah, I think
so.
that are included from PSRC?
I'm comfortable with the revisions that they've requested. I don't have
Okay.
any issues with that. Will there be anything? Well, I guess. Maybe, how does it work then? So community development can recommend them to go forward and then we will be missing one of our community development members.
You have a new
Still
one.
stand. I
Yeah,
suppose
we'll
we'll
have
still
a-
have 2. Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Look,
Hopefully they
the
don't-
council's gonna, sorry.
Yeah, Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, the council is going to appreciate the work that this committee did. So I think that's what Director Arteche is referring to. As you know, when we meet all together, we lean on our committees quite a bit to have done kind of the work, and knowing that that work was put in gives us a lot of confidence. So I think that's what she was referring to.
Director Arteche.
Yeah, I just don't want to add extra fluff, but this is kind of a little bit of extra fluff. You are absolutely correct, Councilmember Mayhew. There's very few cities that have this council structure, and I know that it's been arduous, and we've often thought, oh, what if we don't have committees? Wouldn't that be nice? This helps the comp plan. This committee makes things happen. It vets it, it organizes it, it gets it flowing. So it is a good thing for Snoqualmie to have this committee.
I appreciate that. Okay, then, with that forwarded, as the schedule allows, I'll defer to FNA to set the schedule for council meetings. Probably somewhere in January. Then that takes us to the next thing, which is the economic development portion. Yeah, Councilman Mayhew.
Sorry, Chair, just to help FNA sort of know to keep their eye on that, perhaps administration could put something on the FNA agenda. I know it's already set for tomorrow's meeting, but just sort of saying upcoming items so they can sort of keep track of that and sort of slot it in.
City Administrator.
The calendar's already out for 2024, so I'll ask Director Arteche to already assign it a date 2024 also.
And then that would result in it coming up on
Correct.
the agenda, the proposed agenda in that timing.
Correct.
Great solution.
Okay, then. The next item is the economic development recommendation. And for that, I believe that we had started talking about that, or it was introduced, but we didn't have a whole lot of time to discuss it at one of our meetings a while back. So Director Arteche, do you have anything that you wanted to say to introduce the elements?
Well, thank you, Chair. We did have the element introduced by our Planning Commission Chair, Chair Luke Maruziak. I do see that Bobby, our EDC Chair, is available. She's welcome to add to the conversation, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I mean,
one thing that I was curious about is we got this survey, or I guess this is from the US Census Bureau anyway, about where people work and where they live. And the unfortunate thing about it is it was dated 2019, which is pre-pandemic. And I just wonder how much these numbers have shifted around. It could be that, I mean, it would depend on how people count things. If people are working from home counts as being at work where they live, then our number has actually gone up by quite a bit. So I'd be curious to see if there's any sort of updated information on that from post-pandemic, or if there is some intent to gather that information in the future. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that.
That was the most current information that we had. So that this is the information that the EDC used. And so we're providing you a historical look at the information that was put together as they did their work.
Got to go with the information we have. That's fair. Councilor Mayhew.
Yes, I have entirely non-scientific information, not statistically gathered, which is my assessment of the morning use of the I-90 traffic metering lights, which for those of you who don't have the history on this, I thought was unnecessary when it was put in, but the state washed out thought was very necessary. And then, of course, we went through several years where they were just off for years. Okay. They're back on in the morning, and the backups are getting longer and longer on weekday mornings. So, you know, I think to your point, Chair, I think perhaps we're continuing to see how that's all going to fall out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, clearly, I think people work from home a lot more for a period of time now. Maybe that's shifting back, how fast and so on. I think is a great question, and I don't think we're at the end of seeing where that's all going to end. But it is much more back in the direction than it was, say, 2 years ago. But yeah. I think getting updated information and knowing how that ends. You know, one thing to keep in mind, I've always been struck by, of the 2,000 jobs or so in Snoqualmie. Now, you'll hear different numbers kicking around, because if someone's focusing on Snoqualmie Valley, you've got different numbers going on. But if you just focus on the city of Snoqualmie, the number of jobs that are located, so I'm not talking about work from home, I'm talking about primarily bricks and mortar. The number of jobs located in Snoqualmie, there's only a few hundred of them are filled by people. So last numbers I looked at were about 2,000. So give or take 2,000 jobs located in Snoqualmie, less than 200 of those are filled by people that live in Snoqualmie. And that, I think, is something we need to keep thinking about, because to me it signals a lot of the jobs we have here are not, for whatever reason, we're not filling them with folks that live here. And I have believed for a long time that that's because the pay rates of many of those jobs are not at a level that would allow someone who lives here to, make a living at those jobs. So that tells us a lot about the type of community we're going to have. Folks come in to work here and then they leave. And that just, that impacts the type of community we have. So keeping an eye on that, I think, is pretty important.
Director Arteche.
Yeah, just to enhance that just a little bit more, you will see draft policies that reflect draft goals to try and capture more of the jobs in Snoqualmie. We've got roughly about the same number of people coming into the city as the same amount of people that are leaving the city. And we spent quite a bit of time kind of showing the lay of the land to the EDC, so they understood these demographics and they understood what was happening. We brought PSRC and we took a look at the PSRC economic model, and then they decided to go ahead and make policies or recommend policies that could help shift and change that jobs housing balance.
Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, that's just huge. And I think you can use the census data to actually track down fairly well where those folks live that come in to work in the upper Snoqualmie Valley. So, and they come from a long way. You might think, well, maybe a bunch from Issaquah. There is a slug, but Issaquah's also an expensive place to live, not as expensive as here, but actually a lot are coming across 18. And of course, there's a lot of work to try and help that be, but it's still a long drive. It just has huge impacts in all kinds of ways. And that, yes, so agree with our Director Arteche.
One of the things that I was wondering if the EC talked about and to what extent was the issue brought up at our last meeting by Councilor Mayhew about how downtown retail seems to be struggling. I just try to think about, what could be the causes. I'm wondering how the rents are comparing post-pandemic to pre-pandemic. My understanding is that the rents downtown didn't used to be a significant problem as compared to the issue that businesses are having up on the ridge. And I'm wondering if that situation has changed And I'm wondering what if anything, do the elements that have been presented by EDC here help to address some of those concerns? That could be a question to Bobby, I'm not sure.
Well, hi. Yeah, I'm not aware of the rent situation. I don't know if
Speculation.
I haven't heard much about that. To be honest, I know Joella should be on here as public comment, so she might know better about the rent conversations. We have a greater concern regarding some code changes that I'll leave it up to Councilmember Mayhew to maybe start the conversation, but that is more of our concern going forward of being able to push us being tourist destinations and some codes that there are two in particular that the EDC would like to be able to present to you guys and maybe get a letter to the council regarding percentage of occupancies with downtown merchants and the first floor, and also the ability for the landlords to have a longer time to fulfill correct retail for downtown and continue the revitalization and expansion based on the comp plan, and also what has been presented for years of the growth of downtown Snoqualmie for the merchants. That's their number one concern right now. That's been brought forth in the last, let's say, 6 weeks. And that's our bigger concern of wanting to get some support to maybe bring, like I said, the communication from 23 years ago, almost 24 years ago, and how downtown has shifted. That has been the dialogue of showing up to the Downtown Merchants Association and the conversations at the EDC meetings.
Thank you. I think we do have an item on our agenda to address that in a little bit, so we'll hold
Okay.
on.
Great, and it looks like Joelle got added in so she can speak to rent. As I can't.
If Joelle wants to share any thoughts, and if not, that's okay too. Yes, Joelle, can they be unmuted? Okay.
Hear me?
There we go. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, Joelle Gibson, owner of Carousel. To speak to the rent in downtown, I know that some business owners just have been struggling. I'm not currently on the Downtown Merchants Association as a board member, but I am as a member and on events and whatnot. But I can only speak to my own rent, and it is incrementally growing each year as expected. I know that rent is increasing everywhere, and I know some merchants did get a little bit of forgiveness during COVID, but that's gone and increasing. So to kind of speak to what Bobby was bringing up, and I know that this is hopefully going to be a topic of discussion. I think the concern of the ratio, obviously, of retail to services is a concern for downtown merchants, and also what businesses are going in. I moved my business to downtown Snoqualmie 5 years ago from the plateau, being on Smash Plateau for 28 years, in the hopes of building my business downtown and having year-round business and tourism opportunity. So I am a strong advocate of promoting and continuing the tourism that is already exceeding each year and is exciting in downtown, but continuing to see that grow. But it's got to be the right mix of businesses, retail versus services. I can speak more about that later if you'd like.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, other thoughts on the economic development element of the committee? Director Arteche.
Just wanted to point out that some additional changes were made to this these proposed draft recommendations to include a concentrated new focus on the woodman. So getting a local high-end restaurant as a destination point for downtown was a big was a big part of these draft recommendations. So they'd like to see a downtown that has a 4-star dining experience.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right. There wasn't any further discussion here, then the next step would be to forward this to council. All right. Without objection, then make it so. For January or somewheres around that time. Okay. Then the next thing is the Economic Development Commission letter of support, and I believe that this is for an MOU. Director Teche, do you want to lead us off on that?
Yes, thank you. So there are 2 letters of recommendation that were accomplishments for the EDC this year. And Bobby, feel free to jump in on this and or Councilmember Watton. But the EDC was presented the opportunity to recommend to the council for joining or being part of an economic alliance. It's a consortium of local valley cities under the umbrella of one of the branches of King County that would, if we could come together and have an MOU, would allow for some grant opportunities to flow. So there was a presentation that was done by the county, and there was some additional information that was shared by Councilmember Watton that this is a partnership, doesn't require any money to join this, but an MOU would help solidify and show that work was done amongst all of the councils in the valley to allow for this the signing of this document. So I imagine that this will come forward again with an agenda bill to it, and there'll be an opportunity for the council to recommend the mayor sign as being part of this consortium of cities. And then from there, I imagine that King County would help submit or put together application proposals that would increase economic development within the valley. That's all I can say about that in a nutshell.
Excellent, thank you. Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. I think if we could get a agenda bill authorizing the mayor to sign and expressing the council's support, I suspect this committee would send that forward on consent agenda. And so let's get that done.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah, I don't see a downside to this at all. It opens up new opportunities to work together with the other cities, as well as the opportunities to access additional funding. So I don't see.
Yeah, we unanimously supported this presentation, and it allows just to have the entire valley, not necessarily just Snoqualmie, to collaborate to support the businesses from King County and other elements. And so the EDC, like I said, unanimously voted to support this very quickly.
Well, thank you to EDC for the hard work on that to bring it to us. Councilmember Christensen.
It's my understanding that all of the other cities have signed off. Is that accurate?
I do not have an update. I do believe there was a little bit of delay in, some of the other cities getting on getting in front of their councils. So I would need to double check.
Okay. Councilmember Watton, may know.
Does Councilmember Watton know? Not Washington.
Councilmember Washington might know as well.
That's true.
That's true.
I'd ask Watton though if it was me.
Exactly. Well, Watton's here, so.
Thank you. Just a quick update. All 4 cities are moving forward quickly on this, and I just wanted to make sure that the other cities had a chance to digest this first. And particularly Carnation and Duval are very excited about this. And I do also want your input, because we have approached the Snoqualmie tribe to be a partner as well. And we will be meeting with 3 of their representatives on December 15th. And if you're interested in joining with us, let me know. I will pass it along to Jamie Martin as well as Angelique Dodge from King County. But this gives us a tremendous opportunity of working together because most of us can't afford a dedicated economic development director. And it is being coordinated with the 501c3 that was created here, and that's Snow Valley Innovation Center is the all volunteer group helping to support this. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, then. That takes us to the next item, which is the EDC liaison report to the committee. Councilmember Mayhew, I believe you have a couple items to bring to us.
Yeah, so just a quick side comment as we kind of look forward. We're coming to the end of this year. So as we get into the new year, we'll redo all the committee assignments and liaison assignments. And one thing that has always been, I think, really key to the effective function of this committee is that for the commissions that are involved with, in some way or another, community development, if the liaisons can be the members of this committee, that really can help a lot with the communication back and forth and really causing those things to move forward into council. So just would really encourage us to do that. I feel like, honestly, prior to COVID, we had developed quite a good flow of information, and it just kind of has not been as strong since COVID. And so I would really encourage us to try and move back towards a really strong back and forth. So, for example, at this committee, I would expect really at every committee meeting, one of the liaisons would be talking about the work of one of those key commissions and kind of what's going on and how do we move forward. And they're looking for guidance from us. Sometimes we need to go to the full council to get that. They're looking to communicate their recommendations to us. Sometimes we want to take that to the full council, even if it's just information flow. But I think maybe we haven't been quite as strong on that recently, and maybe we could have a goal to get back to that. So that's just a side comment. With the discussion at the most recent EDC meeting, there was a couple things that came up, and I would say just sort of my putting a little bit of a perspective on it that I had is our Economic Development Commission is looking for ways to help strengthen economic development in the city. So yes, tourism is a big part of that. The health of our merchants, all of that. They're looking to sort of try and identify issues, figure out ways to help solve those, bring those ideas to us. And then looking for guidance from us as to because they don't necessarily see everything. What can we ask them? What is on the council's mind that they can sort of dig into and find out for us? They're very willing to do that work. They're looking for requests from us. And so it seems to me, as I just look back at our own community in the last year, I can't remember us thinking about guidance we might give to EDC. So I think maybe that there's some room for us to step up. Two issues that came up in particular is sort of let me back up, not say two issues. Let me start with one topic they spent a fair amount of time, and I want to report to you, they being the EDC, was the downtown business community and issues around the use of space, particularly on Railroad, right? So we have retail businesses, and to the extent that retail businesses leave that space, that subtracts from an overall sort of a critical mass idea, right? Because what we want is folks coming to that retail area and then moving between the businesses. Oh, I came to get lunch, but on the way back to my car, let me stop in at this store and maybe I'll buy some things that, or maybe I come to the store and hey, look at that store and hey, let's just stay for lunch. This kind of, you know, there's sort of a critical mass, and you guys have all seen the studies. If we can take now 2 hours and 4 hours are long periods of time, but if we can take a 2-hour visit and turn it into a 4-hour visit, you know, the studies 4x the spending on average that happens. So getting a critical mass that causes that is a huge objective for us. So if we think back about all the work we've done in the last, well, decade and a half, all the work on railroad, the boardwalk, everything that's, and then there's a couple downtown master plans, which these are studies that were done. We didn't really adopt them per se as a council, but we've been taking pieces of them and trying to implement them. So, and some of that we adopt in the form of it comes into our code or it comes into our comp plan, some of those ideas. In any event, the issue is just, you know, starkly and honestly, if I look back 4 years ago when I ran for office, we had more retail downtown than we have today. And so the goal has not been over those 4 years to hold steady or to subtract. That the goal was 4 years ago, we need more. So granted, some pretty you know, unexpected things happened during those 4 years, but we got to, I think, get back and attack that. So, and I think the downtown merchants are, well, the EDC, let me talk about them. The EDC, I think, was focused on that, and they're concerned about that as well. So 2 things in particular that were discussed were this mix of retail and non-retail on Railroad Avenue. So the city's goal is 75% retail currently. And we're perhaps right in the range of meeting that, maybe a bit below it. I'm not sure, to be honest, exactly, but it's in that vicinity. But as new businesses come in, all the folks downtown, they see a new business come in. If it's not retail, they're all scratching their heads saying, well, wait, how is this helping us? We're not moving in the right direction. You know, this is not what we need. We need more retail. Okay. Now, you know, there's some room for discussion about services. I go downtown to get my hair cut. Yes, I actually do need to cut the hair sometimes. I know it actually still grows, just on the sides, but,
I need a haircut too.
well, the thing is, I go down and then I think, hey, I just think about the most recent time I was down having my haircut. I went next door and I got a coffee. So, that's the kind of thing we want, more of that, right? So anyway, the 75%, here's the concern on the EDC. Maybe 75% isn't the right goal. Maybe that really needs to be 90%, because here we are, we're not moving in the right direction. And we need that critical mass. Maybe we need, so their request is, can we look at 90%? They're interested in how can they help in that regard. So they would like direction from council. So this is council's involved, administration's involved, and the community's involved, right? So EDC is saying, help us know how we can help in this regard. From a policy perspective, that's sort of council territory, but that's also administration can recommend to us and give us insight and what are they finding as they try to implement this. So they would really like to see us consider, how do we move towards a higher retail percentage, particularly on railroad. And here's the thing, sooner than later.
Mhm.
So great, put it into a study, a comp plan in a year or two, you know, all of that's good, but their message is sooner than that, sooner, not later. Second item is and this is something that we've talked about over this last year in this committee. Although, you know, there's a slight different variation on this when you're up on the ridge, up on Center Street than downtown. But in both cases, you end up looking at a city policy. I think it's an ordinance, but in any event, where there are issues with space that's designated for one use. And then after a period of time, if there are no takers, then it can be put up for other use. The concern is that time is very short, 120 days. Now, that's a matter of opinion. I just stated an opinion that that's short. But in the world of leasing, and vacancies, we've all seen 120 days is really not that long. So the question is that policy being at that time period? And just to be clear, it's not something that comes by right. It's something that's voluntary. The city can give a waiver at 120 days, but it's not, a landlord doesn't have a by right, get that. But but listen, I won't get into legal. We need to talk to city attorney for that sort of thing. But the question here is that policy allowing us or resulting in us not having the retail targets that we're trying to get to? So those are two things in particular that came up. And so the idea was, maybe we as a committee or maybe going to the full council could try and help focus in on this and try to provide some help. Last thing I'll just say is, two kind of quick comments. We do spend a lot of time on the comp plan where we set policies and objectives, things we're trying to achieve. The key is that how do we then really bring that to life? Get that to happen. So I'm not talking about the comp plan now, just even the comp plan that we're currently operating under. How do we really, are we doing everything we can to get that to happen? So it's more than just comp plan matters very much, but what we do with it to bring it alive matters. And then one just last thought is, as we think about how we, the council and this committee, interact with EDC, how do we work with them to identify the key issues in our economic development of our city? Because the folks running businesses, the folks that live here, they all know what those issues are, but not everyone knows every issue. So how are we working with them to really surface and identify the key issues and then try to get work done to actually get outcomes on it? So those are the things I just sort of want to report in from EDC. As you heard earlier, EDC chairs on the line and could add comments. But I think my understanding is kind of a request to us is, can we help with addressing that retail percentage and then the unleased space, the duration, and what guidance or requests might we have from them and that for EDC, and then what can we do to try and look into this more and maybe figure out if we want to make some changes.
Thank you very much. I was curious about the issue of what some cities did during the pandemic to try to help out some of their restaurants was they allowed them to take over parking stalls. And we had one or two downtown. I was wondering, is that something that the downtown merchants and the EDC would like us to continue allowing, which I believe that those were just kind of, we'll look the other way as a city. I don't think that they were technically codified as a thing that was allowed. Is that something that they would like us to codify and allow them to do? And will we like, should there be some sort of plan to make that a slightly more quasi-permanent, not totally permanent, but quasi-permanent feature, where some of the ones that went up looked like they were they didn't look like they were intended to be there for a very long time. I'll put it that way. Yeah, Mr. Chambliss.
In my previous life, we've been working with the community liaison, and we removed one and kept one at the merchant's request. So
from the EDC standpoint, again, it all basically came from the COVID. That was actually extremely helpful. We had a request into the city or administration to do one on over by Buckshot, and then also one over by Carousel, because they'll just pop in, pop out, and the regulations within COVID was extremely helpful for the merchants. And so if that's something that, and I know that Down to Earth has also expressed that on the back end for deliveries and some of the other merchants on the back end. So that was extremely helpful. And Council Mayor or Council Mayhew, thank you for articulating. I think you did a great job. We just want to continue what's on the comp plan, what was previous to COVID and everything, that the city's plan to expand downtown merchants and expand into the Riverwalk, all of that, to just keep that as a focus. And again, we're not, the EDC hat is for economic growth, not anti-services. It's just figuring out where it's the right place to put those. And we just want to keep it a tourist destination and not be detrimental to the downtown merchants. And like I mentioned in the meeting last week, there were in the downtown merchants meeting when this was brought to light, some rumbling under their breath that have been here for years. Their leases are coming up. And so if that plan of the city and plan of the comp plan that everybody's worked so hard on their element of, we might have some more leakage. So just wanting to put that out there, but thank you for representing us.
Thank you, Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, just, thank you. I meant to ask, did I get it right? So good to hear that I did. And just quick thing, I know I brought this up to a previous council meeting, so, but also in the back of, behind the more immediate two things I brought up is just, we, the city, over the last decade and a half, have put millions of dollars into downtown revitalization, but we had a vision, have a vision of much more than that. You know, we've made reference to the Riverwalk. We got about $1.5 million, a little less, $1.5 million grant. Well, let's call it $1.5 million in grants to move that forward. And then that got all hung up on a whole bunch of things. That's now cleared. But just to be clear, if you go look at the Riverwalk master plan, that's my guess, $50 million plan that probably takes decades. So are we moving that plan forward? You know, that $1.5 million that we have, let's move on that. Let's get those projects going. Everything sort of got stuck. We all know why, but let's unstick it. And then what about the downtown master plans? Are we going to do something, you know, a block off of, you know, there's discussion about what do we do a block off in each direction, one block off of railroad that then might allow railroad to be more retail focused, but how do we develop, like, and that's going to take money. So there's just a lot to be done if we focus on it, on economic development.
Thank you. One of the things we talked about on the planning commission when we were doing the downtown relook was Falls Avenue. And
Yep.
there's some certain things that could be done there to just make it look a little bit more attractive. And I think that's starting to happen. Some of the work that was done around the Engel and Volkers building, I think helps out a lot. But a big issue is if a pedestrian who's visiting looks down that street and it doesn't look like it's an inviting place, then they turn around. And there are some things that we could do, I think, back there that we could talk about as well. We are running out of time here. I did want to mention that it was, I guess over 18 months ago now, that I was about this close to bringing an agenda bill that related exactly to this issue about the rent time or the time that the building owner would have to rent out to a retail space. And that got hung up a little bit with regard to some of the issues related to center. But that is currently moving through the planning commission right now. And once we get through that little issue, then we could have something ready to go in relatively quick order on that topic. And then Councilmember Mayhew, and then we'll probably have to wrap it
Yeah,
up.
very, very quick comment of maybe we could take these topics up at our, so I'm aware of that and totally support that, as you know, but at our next meeting, because I think the big message that I got from EDC is not only these issues are important, but we need urgency. So perhaps we could talk about, and maybe we could ask staff to do a little work between now and then. What can we do as a council or as a committee? And then, you know, what can we do to help move something forward soon to help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then at our next meeting, we'll take up the housing recommendations and the update to the council priority tracker. And unless there is objection, we will adjourn. And it is 6:59. Thank you all for being here. Have a good night.